Welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Pascal. I'm Dr. Dan. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic in terms of being proactive or being reactive in terms of our overall health. This past weekend I was away to Regina for a tournament with one of my boys, and for some weird reason we ended up having free satellite radio for this weekend. I'm not sure exactly why. But the interesting part of it is there was a commercial that was repetitive during the drive back and forth. And it was from a company, it was called Princeton Longevity Center. So what they were trying to, I guess, get people to do was to be more proactive, obviously using their resources, their tests, to determine if they had any health problems or concerns. And they mentioned that one gentleman got tested, found out that he had arteries that were 70% blocked. Through diet and exercise and supplementation, he was able to reduce that. And obviously the whole goal there was to avoid a heart attack later on.
Right.
That led me to basically kind of have that thought of how many times are we being reactive towards our health versus being proactive? And sometimes that's a frustrating part of our jobs is sometimes we really wish we could have met people earlier on in the process, right?
And I think there's a few things to consider there, but one, our system has really trained us, our healthcare system has trained us to be reactive, right? If you think about how we've been trained that if something hurts, I go get it checked. If something's broken, I go get it checked. But rarely are we encouraged to be proactive, to go continuously maintain things without a problem, an underlying problem. I think the best example of that in our healthcare system would probably be dentistry. I think they've done the best job of showing us that if we maintain the health of our teeth by brushing and flossing and going to get routine checkups every 6 months or maybe even every 3 months at the dentist, that you can prevent the decay, the damage in the cavities of the teeth.
And the hard work on a daily basis, flossing, brushing your teeth, like that's ingrained in us now, but 40 years ago that wasn't the case. It was basically, wait till something hurts, pull it out, and then go back to your regular life, right? So that, yeah, absolutely, they've done a great job.
So that would be the example of proactive would be brushing, flossing, and doing your regular checkups, and reactive would be waiting until there's a hole in the tooth, a cavity, or maybe even to the point where you need a root canal. That's reactive, and sometimes obviously in reactive care, not only can it be too late, but sometimes the intervention, right, what we have to do as healthcare providers can be more invasive or more drastic, like pulling a tooth or a root canal or a crown or something like that at that point. So our system has trained us to be reactive, but then the other thing can also be for people is the busy life, and sometimes we can push off our healthcare being proactive because it's like, well, I have to take care of the kids and I have to do this and I have to do that, and then you put your health on the back burner and we become reactive. So there's two things there.
And a few things that we want to maybe bring up to you, and I'm talking to myself as well today, right, is what else could I or should I be doing to, in the long run, be a massive benefit to our overall health and well-being, right? And obviously seeing patients, a few weeks ago, unfortunately, one of my patients had a heart attack. I had seen him a few weeks prior. He, again, looked in shape, looked great, no issues, no concerns. So technically, if he would have gone and got a routine check, everything would be fine, and he actually then had a heart attack. Luckily, he was able to survive and now is doing well, is on the road to recovery. But the doctor said after the fact, saying, we found out that your arteries were 90% blocked. So obviously this did not take a week to develop. This is years and years and years. And his wife came in, gave me the update that everything's going well, and he signed up at the Refit Center. So in Winnipeg here, we have a great facility just down the road from us called the Refit Center, where they do basically helping people get back into as great of a health as they can be following whether it's heart attack, stroke, different things like that. So the Refit is full of people that are really trying to get their health back. Now, the thing that I always notice when I'm driving by there is I wish people would be filled in with a bunch of healthy people instead of a bunch of people that are unfortunately on the back end of things, right?
The reactive side.
The reactive side. Exactly.
And I think that the hard part will be sometimes I think it's busy, like I said, and finances. And so sometimes people think that obviously the cost up front of doing it whether that's what you're considering to be a time cost or a financial cost.
Yes.
But really it's an investment now. And when we look at the grand scheme of things over time, it's much cheaper to put in the time and the money now than it is to have the consequences later on, because sometimes those consequences are drastic. And there was actually a research article that I pulled up when we started talking about this, Dr. Dan. They looked at long-term healthcare costs when people approached their healthcare proactively, meaning they were going to see proactive healthcare providers, whether it was a chiropractor or they were seeing naturopathic medicine or just integrative clinics. They were going to find people that were proactive.
Yeah.
And these people, over a 7-year period, had 60% reduced in-hospital admissions, 60% reduced hospital days, 62% reduced surgical procedures, and an 85% reduced pharmaceutical cost, right? Or spending on pharmaceutical drugs, right? So that investment, even like that's over 7 years, right? So think about that over 20, 30, 40 years. That is a massive savings over time, and not only your health, but money now is money and health save later, because what is that real cost?
And the key thing for me when I think about that is time.
Yeah.
That's, I think, is the real cost of things, is when someone is not going to the hospital, when they're not spending their days at a doctor's office, getting a surgery, recovering from an event, having to take, going back and forth to the pharmacy, just basically that now being their whole driving force. Instead, they're traveling, spending time with family and friends and living their life. That to me is a massive cost.
Yes.
Right? And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't see it until it's too late.
Yes,
right?
We see that on x-rays a lot, right?
Yes.
When you see the x-rays and you think, man, I wish I could have seen this person 20 years ago or 30 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Because oftentimes that damage is irreversible to a large extent. Yes, we can always help people, and yes, we can always try to undo some of the damage, but sometimes the reality is irreversible damage that can't be undone, right?
So now I guess the question now comes, great, we all understand proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
So now the key thing is, what can we do? I think the first thing that we have to understand is that proactive versus reactive is really a mindset that you could apply everywhere, right? To your finances, to your relationship, to your health, to how you maintain your house,
Yeah.
right? Like if you put that proactive approach, now you won't have a bigger problem later on, right?
Sure.
I think that's, we could see that across the board.
Mindset and lifestyle.
Exactly right. So one of the things I was thinking about is, if unfortunately, God forbid, we have a diagnosis of something, would we be different or live our life different right now as opposed to if we would have a diagnosis? Meaning
Right.
that if I have a diagnosis of something, would I change my diet, exercise? Meaning that if I do have to change that, that means I'm not doing a good enough job right now.
Right.
Right? And that's self-assessment. Can I do a better job at eating? Yeah, probably, for sure.
Always, right? Yeah.
We try to do the best we can, but is there another level? Probably.
Yeah.
Is there different stretches, exercises that I could do now to save me time, energy later on? Right? Is there different things that I could do in terms of sleep, energy, supplements, all that,
Yeah.
all those things, right?
I think that's the best way for people to, I guess, self-guide and choose, because it could be overwhelming. Let's say
Absolutely.
you don't want to, okay, so we talked about, sleep, exercise, nutrition, social health, mental health. There's all these different, I guess, avenues. But if you approach it from how you suggested, so let's just say, God forbid, something catastrophic happens, a heart attack or a cancer diagnosis tomorrow, put yourself in those shoes, and what would be the very first thing that you would change, right? And that very first thing, that's obviously the most prominent one, and that's the one that you should approach or attack, right? If you just want to take one thing away from this and change one thing, I would say put yourself in that mindset, envision that happening. What would be the first thing that you would think you'd have to change? And that's probably where you should start.
That's right. So
right?
basically saying, join the refit or a gym before you're trying to then, rebuild your heart health after an event, right?
Yeah.
We want to do as much of this before.
Yes.
Right? That's the key thing.
Yeah, proactive health. And that's why we're seeing clinics like this open up.
Yeah.
I think there's a general trend in healthcare now that's moving towards proactive, because we're realizing that the costs associated with reactive later on, not only financial but health-wise for people, are just too big. And so there's a demand now for more proactive health. That obviously largely private clinics right now and private institutions, but I think that's just going to keep growing as more and more things become proactive, so that people can take care of themselves over the long run versus reacting to a problem later on.
So I think maybe we could give some homework today.
Sure.
So let's give homework, as you know, go down the list maybe of what you're currently doing. Let's just stick for health right now. Obviously you could do the same thing with your relationships, your finances, your house, everything else. But as an overall sense of health, you know, what is it that you maybe could do better at in terms of, let's say, nutrition? You know, where could you improve there? Where could you improve in your exercise? Where could you improve in your self-care in terms of your spine, your adjustments, your stretching, you know, everything else like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I would say if we're going to go with nutrition, let's give a couple tips, right? And I think number one, the easiest thing, and I think it's so overlooked, it's not about food, it would actually be water intake. Because I think that is one of the global problems that we have, is we're dehydrated, right? We eat a lot of packaged food, so that dehydrates us and we don't drink enough water. So one area I think most people would agree that they could all get better on is just increase water intake, right?
Easy.
So increase water intake. Exercise, right? How much movement, Dr. Dan, do you think would be required for people to have just the minimum requirements of movement daily?
Ideally, it would be, you know, have that feeling that you have a little bit of a sweat every day.
Yeah.
You know, it could be as little as 5 to 10 minutes, whether it's in terms of if you're doing a burst style of exercise to get that heart rate going, get your body moving, but literally think of it as a daily habit of getting your body moving.
Okay, so even we'll say 20 minutes, right? Daily habit, 20 minutes. So we'll keep it condensed, right? So
easy for people to do.
Yeah. And so you could have a burst exercise or some type of exercise, whether it's riding a bike aggressively for 20 minutes, starting your day off by drinking down a couple big glasses of water to get the water in, and then you could finish with some spinal hygiene exercises or some meditation. Right.
Speaking of meditation, a whole other topic we could maybe get into later.
Yeah, absolutely could, right?
The amount of pressure and stress that would, you know, affect our overall health and well-being. So little daily things like meditation time, you know, quiet time, you know, to rest the mind, rest the body, to enable us to do that, or be the very best that we can.
For sure.
Okay, I think that should be all for today. I think we're
absolutely,
just to make sure we're not overwhelming people. But again, thank you for joining us. Again, we are listening to the Healthy Commute, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.